Well, hello everyone and welcome to The Basics of Life. My name is Ken Burkey and Theresa McAdams is here once again. This is your second visit.
Yes.
Yeah,
Third visit.
Third visit. We're paying her big bucks, and so that's why she comes back each time. Well, the last time we talked about your work with Common Ground, which is a Saturday morning food and clothing event where relationships are being built every Saturday morning and awesome things are happening. But here we are this time of year. I want to talk to you about the homeless, and eventually get to the rotating shelters that the churches are doing. Because you told me before we started the show that during the winter, the one way the homeless are sheltered is through churches.
Yes.
That's the only way right now that it's happening.
Yes.
Yeah. And so Green Valley, we do a night a week, and we've done a couple nights a week before, but it's been a huge blessing. But I want to start at the beginning because homeless is a big issue or a big topic or a controversial kind of topic.
It's very complicated too.
And complicated,
It's a very
that's
complicated
good.
issue.
Why don't you first talk about what you have learned, some of the things you've learned by working with the homeless? Because you work on Common Ground on Saturday mornings. Some are homeless, not all. I mean, there's a lot of others, seniors and single parenting and things. But you have been in the trenches with the shelters. When Hangtown Haven was around, you were involved, and you have relationships with the homeless. So
Yes.
Just talk about what you've learned.
Well, I've learned there's as many different stories as there are homeless. You can't really categorize enough. You know, everybody has their own individual story, and some are not surprising stories, and some are things I never expected.
Like what?
Well, there's every age range. You don't expect to see senior citizens living, out on the streets. You don't expect to see 19-year-olds or young 20-somethings that maybe came from a decent family, to wind up there. You have stereotypes in your head of how people got there, but
Right.
I've learned that there's, like I said, there's as many stories as there are people.
So can you get, without names or anything, just some examples of the surprising, our stereotypical, of what a homeless person is, the person laying in the gutter with the paper bag and who's an alcoholic. And again, that's one kind of homeless person that we're supposed to care for and help, but kind of just give some other examples. Oh, I guess how they got there. How is a senior citizen gotten there, or a 21-year-old? Why are they there when they came from a pretty decent home?
Right. And I kind of think of this with myself. It's like how many poor choices or bad circumstances am I away from being homeless? It's not just there are cases of mental illness and addiction and things like that, and there certainly is that. But there's also just some tough luck stories too. There's the family who was driving to Tahoe. They had an uncle, so they moved their family. The car broke down. The situation changed. He couldn't house them anymore. Things like that. And they're like, okay, we wound up homeless with my family. I had a house in Oregon, and now I'm homeless because of a series of broken promises or bad choices. And
Yeah, with the economic turndown, a few years ago, it kind of brought everyone one step closer to the potential of homelessness if there's a few more bad decisions or bad luck or whatever.
Right.
I think one of the things I appreciate about Theresa and about your team is as you build relationships, you start to see how much more, quote, normal these people are, as instead of, well, they're those people.
Sure.
Talk about some of those relationships.
And we've had a lot of success stories too.
Yeah.
It's so encouraging that the shelter's already started this season, and I don't see a handful of people that I've seen in the past, which is they've moved on. They've been able to pick themselves up and move on, and they're now in some sort of stable housing situation. And we have some volunteers that were in the shelter last year that are now want to give back, and they want to be volunteers.
Wow.
So
Okay, so I think part of the homeless solution, and nobody's going to solve it totally, because some people want to be homeless, and there's other people who don't, but talk about the power of relationships and how relationships kind of are the driving factor of hopefully getting someone to find shelter and to find hope.
Sure, I think it's because you build a trusting relationship and you get to know people by name, and they'll open up to you once they're not going to open up to a complete stranger, but once you start talking to people, have conversations, get to know their story, and accept them as they are, faults and all, you know.
Well,
and
you have to do that with me, so you have to do it with
yeah. So I think that's the way. Then you can kind of maybe get to the root of how you can help, you know, and go a little deeper on what kind of resources they truly need, or if they're open to it. And that, I think that's the only way people move on, is when somebody gets to know their true need, their true story, everything that goes with that, and finds out, okay, maybe if we can help in this area, that will impact their overall situation.
So two questions on that. As first of all, how do you, I mean, I think I know the answer, but how do most homeless people feel as far as how they're viewed from the rest of the world?
I think there's some humility there, and I don't think people want to be looked at as homeless, and that's why we really try to treat people with dignity and respect, and they know how they're viewed,
right,
you know,
right.
And so we want to make sure that we are treating people with dignity.
Yeah, because the value, self-esteem, if you feel valued, then you're probably more, you probably want to then take the next step to get help. But if that spiral is down, like nobody cares, and I'm a loser, I'm a whatever, that kind of brings us to even more poor decisions. So I think, again, going back to that relationship, it shows them their value, which will allow them to take those steps.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what does, on a shelter night, what does a typical shelter night kind of look like? I know that's...
And it's different. Well, it's different at each church, but basically you just need a room. You know, you just need a room for people to sleep. We give them a mat, that we have a trailer that has the mats, and either sleeping bags, or this year we're doing some fleece blankets. And so everybody gets their... when they get to the location, they get their mat and their blanket, and some people go to sleep right away. They've been out in the cold all day, they're tired, they just want a place to lay their mat down and go to sleep.
Yeah.
Some of the locations will show movies, have tables and chairs, and people will sit and play board games or cards, you know, for a while, or just a lot of conversation with volunteers. And some places provide a light meal, and so there's just a lot of relational things going on, people talking, getting to know each other. And then, like I say, some people just want a warm, dry place and curl up and go to sleep.
Yeah. So let me just get really, really honest here with maybe some people's questions or some people's fears. Is this safe?
I feel safe doing, you know, I feel safe working with the homeless. We have a check-in process, you know, we have a process that all the shelters use, and check-in belongings and things like that. So we have things in place to make sure it's safe, as it can possibly be, but I feel completely comfortable. I know most people by their first name.
Well, I was going to say,
so
when you build relationships, and talk about the self-policing that goes on too.
Sure. The people really appreciate a warm, dry place to sleep, and they don't want somebody to mess it up for them.
Yeah.
So they don't want another one of the people at the shelter to blow it for all of them. So the idea is they'll self-police, so that it's like, hey, don't cause any problems. We don't want them to shut this location down. Let's make sure we're behaving. So
the reason I ask you that, because it's a legitimate question. If you're on the outside looking in, you're like, well, I wonder if that's safe. But the standards that you guys have, and you have high standards, relationships, and then self-policing. My joke is that shelter night has better standards, and it's safer than when than my house when my kid was in high school. Not a lot there's a lot going on there, but and I think it's a really cool thing. But it really starts with, like you said, they appreciate it, and there are standards, and there's those relationships, and so I think that's important.
Yes.
It's important because I think that can stop people from participating. But you have some amazing volunteers too.
We do. We have great volunteers, and we have volunteers that stay overnight. I myself have stayed overnight, and then we also, like I say, we have some volunteers that used to use the shelter, and so they are uniquely equipped to be a shelter volunteer.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and again, let's just go back to the very beginning. Maybe we should have started with this. This is kind of a people of faith. It's kind of clear in Scripture that sheltering the homeless is a mandate for us. It can be messy, it can be rewarding, it can be hard, but there's really not a choice in this.
And it goes back to pretty basic. You feed the hungry, you clothe the naked, and you shelter the wanderer.
Yeah.
And which is really freeing for me, because then I don't have to get into the politics of it. I don't have to worry about whether I think they should or shouldn't be behaving or doing things they're doing, how they got there, things like that, addictions. That's it's freeing for me that I don't need to bring that into my decision on whether or not to shelter the wanderer.
Yeah.
It's just pretty basic.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the minute I start judging who I should or who I shouldn't, again, there are boundaries and there's standards, and if people violate, but if I prejudge, then I can't. There's not any hope to help someone, because we've seen addictions overcome, we've seen families reconnect, we've seen economics get better, but it started with saying, we don't judge. We're here for you.
And how they got there doesn't change the fact that they're there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Talk about this too, and this happens in Common Ground, our Saturday morning event also. But talk about what's really cool, and you've been doing this long enough. All the resources that are out there that then allow you mentioned it briefly, but just how the shelter is, but then through those relationships, you can connect people to other resources. What are those resources? Give some examples of that.
Sure. Well, there's definitely programs. I mean, there's help for mental illness. There are programs for that. There are programs for addictions. We have them at our Green Valley Church.
Yeah.
We have
Celebrate
programs.
Recovery. Yeah.
Absolutely, getting people connected with those programs. We also, like at Common Ground, we have different agencies come in and work with people on just basic needs. And it's been encouraging. There's an organization called the CRC. They specialize in housing, so they can actually, interview somebody and find out maybe they meet some criteria to get into housing that the person didn't know they wasn't even an option.
Right.
So there's resource. It's just getting to know that person's story, finding out what that true need is, so you can connect them with that resource.
Yeah.
But there needs to be a link. Somebody probably not going to willingly go seek those out, maybe. So it's somebody.
Yeah, they don't know. So this safe place, creating relationships, then can help them, not even knowing what those resources are. You can connect them. There's another statistic out there nationally. I don't know if you've noticed it, but just more people who are homeless who actually have jobs. Do you see that?
I have seen that, definitely. And
because you don't think of that. You don't think of, if you think of a homeless, you don't think they're working.
Right. Well, I guess you think of how much rent is and how much an entry-level job pays.
Yeah.
So you could see where that could happen.
Yeah.
And we have had those circumstances, because we've had people say, hey, can I check into the shelter late? I don't get off work till this time. And it's kind of sounds strange to hear that, but it's true.
And that's where those agencies, though, can kind of help bridge the gap sometimes, or help at least strategize of how can we eventually get you not to be homeless. Right. Or the Common Ground, the groceries, and clothing and things like that. Yeah,
it's out. That quote you use, I love the quote, you tell me you care for the poor, tell me their name.
Right. Craig Greenfield,
Yes.
who's great guy, but that was his quote. So you say you care for the poor, well, tell me their name.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And this is kind of rubber meets the road way to help, is getting to know people and their story and finding out if we can help them,
Yeah. Yeah.
And there, like I said, there are success stories, and it's so encouraging when those come along.
So how is the shelter going this year? How many churches are doing the shelter, and how can maybe we can encourage others to get involved?
Sure. The shelter started this last week, so
Okay.
this is week 2 of the shelter. There are 6 shelters involved, some of them once a week, a couple of them are only once a month. So we do have gaps. We have nights that are not covered right now. We have Tuesday and Wednesdays there's no shelter, and then 2 Saturdays a month there's no shelter. So
So in this winter, Tuesday and Wednesdays, bad weather, there's no shelter.
not yet.
Not yet. So that's what we're praying for. Now you know why we just did this show. This is great information, but what I would like to say is we would love more churches to get involved, because Theresa knows my rant here. If you add up all the square footage of churches that are empty usually at night, there's a lot of square footage. We already have our homeless shelters. They're called the church.
Yes.
And with the standards and with the relationships and with the resources, this is not a scary thing to do. It's not always easy. It can be messy, obviously, but grace is messy, and the world is messy, but the rewards are amazing. And so my hope is that, it only would take seven churches total to say once a week during the winter months. And the rewards are amazing, really amazing.
Yes.
And I know I'm interviewing you, but I got to celebrate a story. When Hangtown Haven was around, which was a great thing, but you were involved in that. There was 2 leaders there. They were homeless, but they were leaders, Becky and Kenny, and they won't mind me telling this story, but because of relationships and working, they've gotten jobs, and then eventually they fell in love, and I will be marrying them next year. And I forgot the date, but I told them I would. But to see the progression of this couple, and now they serve, and they serve back now in helping.
Yes.
But trust me, there is a lot of good things going on out there. And maybe I
There's a
just
lot of
stole the
success.
thunder. I wanted you to close. What's one of your favorite stories? And you don't have to use names, or you can, whatever. But is there a story?
Well, one of my favorite stories is it just happened recently. Is one of our homeless gentlemen. There's a program called Operation Christmas Child, where we fill shoe boxes for that are sent through Samaritan's Purse to third world countries for children to have a box of toys and needed items for Christmas. And our church has done that program for years. And one of our homeless gentlemen called me over and he said, "Hey, can you help me with something?" And he had a bag from the dollar store and one of the shoe boxes and said, "Hey, I want to do one of these shoe boxes. Will you help me pack it?" So we were packing the shoe box, and he did a great job shopping at the dollar store. He got wonderful items. And he said, "Now I know there's a shipping charge." And so we pulled the envelope, and I go, "Yeah, it's $7. And he's like, "Oh, I don't have that on me." And I said, "Well, I have a few dollars on me. How much do you have?" And I have a couple bucks. Then he thought about it for a minute. He goes, "No, it'll mean more if I pay for it. I can get the money by the deadline. I'll get $7 by the deadline. I want to pay for it.
Wow.
It'll mean more." And that story, I was just blown away by that story. He was so excited to give back and do something for a child in need. And I just thought that was very neat, that he also wanted to pay for it himself. It meant more to him to do it fully on his own. So.
And you have seen that more, and your team has seen that there is a lot more of those stories than the stereotypical stories. There will always be people who will take advantage or who won't care and all that, and that's fine. We still have to care for them, but there are some rich stories, because these are amazing people. that have either made bad decisions or bad decisions have been made to them. I know with Kenny and Becky, who, with them, I mean, they would tell you they're smart people that just made some bad choices, and but we all have done that, and so the rewards are just amazing. So I guess we got to wrap this up because the clock just went out. But if you're watching this, you're part of a church, and you want more information of how you can serve, help, shelter, this is the time of year. This is it. And so just call Theresa, right?
Yep.
And what's it's 622-3231, and then your extension is?
203.
203 is her extension, 622-3231. We would love more and more churches to be involved. And again, this is what we're kind of mandated to do.
Yep.
But the rewards are amazing, and obedience is a great thing. So thank you for all you do with that, and we will be praying for more people to step up, and be praying you have a great year.
Great, thank you.
All right, thanks. Thanks for being with us here on The Basics of Life. And again, more information, call Theresa. See you next time.